All right, y'all. I have a treat for y'all, and that is a very special guest, Eddie William Sellers. He recently wrote the book My Life in Stories, The Cabbagetown Years, and the Dark Secrets of Child Abuse. It is a book about a boy's young life while growing up in Cabbagetown, the large religious family he was born into, and trying to survive while living in the shadows of child abuse. Eddie was born and raised in Cabbagetown. He still holds deep love for Cabbagetown, and he's over there often, walking the streets he grew up on. For many years, he was a pastor of Southeast Christian Church and retired from starting his own business, A1 Blueprint. Also, full disclosure, this is my dear, who I've given the title Duke of Cabbagetown and I've been in a relationship with for the past 10 years.
Yes.
All right, dear. So, what is the story about and why was it important for you to write this book?
I started writing this book when I was 50 years old. And maybe a few months into my 50th year, I thought I was going to die. You know, all the drama people go through. I'd had heart surgery that really made me, for the first time, really question life. I felt like my body failed me. And they had to do a 6-hour surgery, and they had to create a pathway through my heart to let the electrical current come in and find a way to come back out. And I almost died a couple of times before I had the surgery, being rushed to the emergency room and them kind of stopping my heart and restarting it and getting me settled down. So I was having these heart episodes. And then in the process of doing this and all the labs and blood work and whatever, I found out I was HIV positive. So not only am I almost dead from the heart attack or the heart surgery, but then I'm going through this thing, and then I'm dealing with the fact that I'm 50 years old or just recently turned 50, which, in my younger days, I felt like, well, man, if somebody's lived to be 50 years old, they've lived a good long life. So in the process of all this, I've started going to therapy to deal with being HIV positive, which I've always loved to write. And the therapist said that, it would be real helpful if you would just start writing down some of your thoughts. Because you've got a convergence of three things: of getting older, heart surgery, HIV, everything. You went through a divorce after 20 years. You've went through a lot of change in your life to write stuff down. So I had this mindset that I would start writing every day, and I mentioned this in some of the book. But the reason this book was, I felt like I needed to go back to my childhood in Cabbagetown, because throughout my life I felt like I had unresolved conflicts that always lived within me. And now I should have told you before we did this interview, I'm a talker, so I can talk.
Baby, I've been with you for 10 years, I know that.
So I had all these unresolved conflicts in me. So instead of I started out just writing a journal. And then I got to thinking, I never really talked to my children, Heather and Jill, and my grandson Caleb, much about my childhood. They knew my Granny Bratcher, and they knew my stories about my Aunt Mary and some of the family. But I never really was one to talk about the difficult times in my childhood. And so I had this mindset that I would write a book. Because I thought I was dying then. I had, even after I found that I was tested positive, I'd even called Keller Williams, set up an appointment, had them to come out and look at my Grant Park house. I was going to go ahead and sell it, and so I could get my house in order, because I didn't feel well. I just didn't feel well. I had a real high viral load. I would give out real easy. I'd spend my weekends in bed. I just was kind of down. But anyhow, I thought I'd sell my house. I was dying. So I had this idea, which is the Cabbagetown years, that I want to write a story that would be my children would get after I had died. That upon my death and the will and whatever else, there would be this not published book, but a manuscript of of a lot of the things that I went through as a child that may help them understand why I was quirky and odd and had different, just the parts of it that created a lot of who I am, which I never really talked to them about. So that's how the book came into existence.
Okay.
And then I basically wrote the book, although I tweaked it a little bit over 10 years, but I basically wrote the book in a couple months. And then my mindset changed when one night when my friend Sammy came and spent the night with me, because we were flying to New York the next morning. And we went up to Bamboo Luau on Cheshire Bridge Road, and we we loved their beef there.
The broccoli and beef.
Yeah, their beef.
Are they still there?
Mongolian beef.
Mongolian beef.
No, they're closed down. So we go to Bamboo Luau because we went and got us some Mongolian beef, fried rice, and Sammy loved Bamboo Luau. And then we go back to the house in Cabbagetown, and we sitting around drinking, had a couple. Me and Sammy smoked weed a lot, so had a little weed, glass of wine, and I just happened to tell him, I'm like, Sammy, I said, I've been writing a book about Cabbagetown and growing up over there. He said, oh my God, Eddie. He said, I want to read it. So I told him, I said, he went into the back bedroom, and I went to my bed. It was about 10 o'clock at night. And so I handed him this printout of the book, and we set the alarm for 5 o'clock to get up to get to the airport. So my alarm went off. I went to wake Sammy up, and Sammy was still awake. And he says, oh my God, Eddie, I've been up all night. Said, I read every bit of that book. And so on the way to New York, he told me, he said, I think you should publish that. And that was the first time that I thought about actually publishing it. Well, then came into the idea that I couldn't publish it as long as my mama was still alive, because it's a real raw, truthful, it was a real raw, truthful, unvarnished picture of a mother that I loved and adored. But it would have really been hurtful for her. But she dead now. She dead now. And so, and then after she died, I would ponder, should I do it? It's because I talk about my Uncle Bud, I talk about my Granny Bratcher. My Granny Bratcher, who was a saint, but there's parts of this book where you're like, she wasn't that big of a saint, because that was some weird shit. And then I tweaked it over the years, because I realized when I reread it originally from what I had written, that person that started writing it at 50 was actually putting a lot of anger and judgment down on the paper. And then as the years went by, I read it, and I'm like, I don't feel like that. That was me coming just for the first time, peeking through the curtains, looking at a life that I'm like, God damn, what a fucking mess. What a fucking mess.
So in writing it, it helped you process those emotions.
Yes, in writing it, I processed all that. I would write and I'd be like, God damn them. I was a 7-year-old little boy. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah. But then as I got that initial stuff out, I'm like, I try to write about also the good part of them, the kindness part of them, but also, and then I had to realize that it was a different era. Child abuse has always been around, but it was actually kind of just it was back then, but people just kind of he was just drinking. It was just your uncle. Just don't put the family business out there.
They're making excuses.
Yeah,
Trying
to. Well, society did. Yeah. They was just being a part of society, and that's what it said. So anyhow, the Cabbagetown years. Before Mama died, I've got a story. I've got one chapter in here that's called eating sandwiches out of a back of a trunk. And when Mama was married to JT, the man who molested me, and this is a guy who, I tell in the book that his dad was sitting at the kitchen table, and he walks up behind his own dad with a shotgun and blows his head off and cuts him up in pieces and puts him in his backyard and pours potash on him. So when this guy would come into my bed when I was 5 or 6 years old, and he'd whisper in my ear, "I'll kill you." Well, yeah, you would kill me, because that's who you are. Yeah. You kill people. So, but anyhow, in talking about all that, I think, in looking back on it now that it's behind me, I've had some things in life that I felt like I was successful at or proud of. Mm-hmm. Of course, I'm proud of my children, proud of my grandchildren, proud that I took and started a get-together that turned into a full-fledged church, Southeast Christian Church, for 15 years that I pastored. Proud of my marriage, proud of starting A1 Blueprint that's still open today. It's been open for 22 years. But now I'm proud of this. I'm proud of this. It's
I'm so proud of you too.
I'm just proud of this.